Kurt Girdle. Good old Kurt Girdle. What about him? I assume you're talking about Gödel's incompleteness theorem. Charles, are you familiar with Joseph Cambell and his work, The Power of Myth? Yeah, the monomyth, the hero's journey that you go on. Yeah, there's like Joseph Cambell, there's Jung, and now we got Jordan Peterson. He's like the apostle, who's taking these types of things up. Succinctly, you have this concept that people have to go through a struggle. So you start in an idealized state, everything's okay, and the perfect hero's journey is Frodo in Lord of the Rings. That is like the hero's journey. He's in the Shire. He's just having fun. He's living life. There's no problems in the Shire. He's like, Mr. Frodo. He's got the little hair on the feet. He's having fun. And then suddenly something occurs that disrupts life. And it's a call to adventure, a call to action. So in this case, Gandalf shows up and Bilbo disappears, and then Frodo gets the ring. And then suddenly Frodo's been cast into a very uncomfortable, unpredictable, and significantly more dangerous world. And he has to go with a mission through a series of obstacles. And every step of the way, it tests him as a person and forces him to grow. And he confronts all dimensions of himself. He understands what true friendship is. When Samwise Gamgee goes with him, he was going to go it alone. And Sam basically said, no, I'm going with you. After the fellowship broke up, he has mentors along the way, but loses those mentors because he outgrows the need for Gandalf. Had Gandalf went along the entire way, it wouldn't have been a very good story for Frodo, because Frodo would always be reliant upon Gandalf. So he had to outgrow the father or the wizard. And then he goes through all these challenges and he confronts death. And then he sees the consequence of failure in Gollum. So if he screws up his mission, he'll become Gollum. And then he says, I'll never be Gollum. But then towards the end of the movie, the end of the book, I should say, he actually almost becomes Gollum, and requires Sam to kind of bail him out for that, which shows the value of connections and friendship. And the thing that made Sméagol different from Frodo was that Sméagol didn't have a Samwise Gamgee. So it's like this amazing journey when you kind of go through it, and he comes out the other side. And when he comes back to the Shire, he's grown so much that he's outgrown the Shire. And even if he could stay, he had no desire to stay, because the reality is that he's such a different person in the hero's journey. And typically when you slay the dragon, you share all of those gifts with everybody. So his gift was the gift of knowledge. And so he finished the book and then gave it to everybody and said, the story is something to inspire future generations. And then he goes off with the elves to, basically live in a different place, because he can't live in the Shire anymore. So Joseph Cambell really did a hell of a job kind of abstracting that concept and constructing a format for stories. And most of human history, if you read the good stories, there's some variation of this type of struggle. From you live in peace, there's a call to action, the struggle, the slaying of the dragon, the sharing of the rewards, and the growth of the hero. And there's some life story. Luke Skywalker is another phenomenal example. It's why the old Star Wars movies were so good and the new ones are so terrible. So with Luke Skywalker, compare that to Rey. Let's kind of walk through it. So with Luke, he's living in a comfortable place as kind of a farmer in Tatooine, no problems at all. He's just doing his thing. And then suddenly there's a call to adventure with the droid, help me, Obi-Wan Kenobi, you're my only hope. And it pushes him out of that comfortable world. And then he finds himself going through a series of challenges, and then eventually he blows up the Death Star. And in the process of doing that, he thinks he's a big bad superhero. And then he goes to complete his training with Yoda, but he doesn't listen. And then he goes and fights Darth Vader in Hoth and Bespin, the flying city. And Vader messes him up, fucking cuts his hand off and just breaks him to pieces. And he's like, holy shit, this Vader dude is no joke. I now understand how powerful the dark side is. And then he comes back in Return of the Jedi, and he grows so much that not only does he defeat his father, but he defeats him in a way that nobody expected, where he converted his father to the light side, which was an impossible task to do. And he and his father together slayed Darth Sidious, and he kind of redeemed that entire arc. So Luke went on this amazing hero's journey every step of the way, and he loses parts himself, like getting his hand chopped off and all this other stuff. But we were rooting for him the entire time, and we lived all the ups, but we lived all the downs. and there were so many surprises and twists and turns along the way. Now contrast that with Rey, where she started already at the top. There's no hero's journey throughout the modern trilogy. She already knows everything. She knows more about the Millennium Falcon than Han Solo does. Her first lightsaber fight wins it with no training. She's smarter than Luke Skywalker, the greatest Jedi ever to be. Every step of the way, she's always just at the top of her power. So there's nothing interesting about that character. Where's the struggle? What does it mean? It's just very poorly constructed character development compared to the journey that Luke Skywalker went on, which is why Luke is a timeless character and people struggle to remember anything significant about Rey. So the hero's journey is not the only way to structure a story, but it's a wonderful way when you really think about it to structure, because it connects to all of us, gives us all hope. Because how many of you listening are in your own life and you're just doing the same thing? You're going to work every day and you're comfortable and you got your dog at home and, like, all right, because Thanksgiving, shit, we got to figure this out. And imagine what would happen in your life if some wizard just fucking showed up and it's like, we're going to go to some crazy place. We're going to go do some stuff. And you're like, what? Who the fuck are you? Get away. They're like, no, and it grabs you and takes you into like a completely different world. And all this scary shit happens and you make friends along the way and sleep with one of the elves and all that stuff is like, wow, that's the coolest fucking thing in the world. That's what makes stories interesting, because all the interesting people, they go on a hero's journey. George Washington did, Napoleon did, some turn to the dark side like Napoleon did, some turn to the light side like George did. And every step of the way you learn as you go. The ancients, like Plutarch, for example, he would write about pairings. So he took a Greek and a Roman and paired them together and found parallels in their lives for studying virtue. Julius Caesar and Alexander the Great were the most famous pairing, but he made many pairings inside of his book. So that was very common in ancient literature. We don't tend to do that anymore.